and thank you for joining us at the ever-improving No Soundbites Allowed podcast. My name is Michael Vasquez. We thank you for joining us in this adventure of describing the politics that go on in our nation on a personal and local level as often as possible, giving you, the audience, more than just 30 seconds to understand what's going on in our nation. We look forward to joining you as we go. Just sit back, enjoy the ride. Please remember, if you like the episodes, like it, share it, let other people know, and if you can, please donate, even if it's $2, even if it's $5, because it all makes a difference. We thank you, and here we go. Well, hello everybody, and thank you for joining me. This is Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, your host at the most popular show, the No Soundbites Allowed. Good to have you all here with us. And I am glad to have everyone back with us. I always love the program, and I thank you all for joining me whenever you do. And so in this episode, we want to go over a few things. And I've done this a couple of times, so hopefully I'll get through in this run, because there's a lot. There's questions of moral superiority that we're hearing, for arguments that some are putting out there to justify actions that they want to do to reward criminals as opposed to the public, which is insulting and upsetting. We're going to be looking at what they're actually talking about. And let's look at the numbers, and let's look at the argument that they're making, because it's important. But first, before I get to that, I do want to backtrack a little bit to an article I had written back in October, I think it was October 16th of 2017, and I had been talking about a gentleman named Nicholas Wan. Just to bring your memory back, Nicholas Wan had declared that he was conditionally looking to become a candidate in the New York 22nd congressional race for 2018. And Mr. Wan believed that he had an excellent opportunity to represent the Republicans in the New York 22nd District, because he was 27 and he had a fresh outlook and he had a lot of solutions that he believed he could bring to the table to help the people of New York. And my problem, though, and my articles at the time in October of 2017 were basically critical of him for one very simple reason. Again, I said conditional candidate. It's the conditional that upset me. And that gave me great pause, because I don't believe anyone who runs for any elected office who says that race, that choice to run as a candidate is conditional on any reason is not a candidate and is not worthy of being elected. I said that in October of 2017. I say it again, because I think that shows a lack of conviction. I think it shows a lack of commitment to the constituents and to the ideals that person says they promote. So I was very critical of him then. And the condition that Nicholas Wan said would make the difference is that if he could raise between October and December of 2017 $25,000, he would run for the election, and he would try and get the Republican nomination, which I, at the time, said, and I stood by it, that he would never get that. He would never make the threshold. He wasn't a good candidate, and he would gain no interest. Now, I've been following politics in the New York 22nd District well over 5 years now, and I'm very familiar with the entire district, all 8 counties, and many of the things that go on there. And I am very aware of all the candidates, declared and not declared, who are on the sidelines thinking about running for the race. I've spoken to many of them. And I will say this, Nicholas Wan did not raise to the standard that is necessary, that we have as a society, quite honestly. But it's again, condition. His condition was to get $25,000, and then he would be a candidate. And I have to tell you, I think that's insulting, because if you believe in anything, if you believe in a set of rules, a set of laws, a platform to stand on, and there's an issue that you believe needs to be addressed publicly to defend and help the public, you do it. Regardless of whether you raise $5 or you raise $25,000 or you raise $25 million, you stand up for that issue, those beliefs, those convictions. You stand up for the things that you can do for the people. Period. It's what I did myself in 2013 through 2014. I raised less than $6,000, and I spent a year, actually more, of my life running for Congress throughout 8 counties because I believed in the issues I was talking about, in immigration, gun control, freedom of speech, a bunch of issues. And I still have those websites up right now today. If you look for Michael Voss for Congress, you'll still find that, because I want the public to be able to see the issues I thought were important then and still are today. That's conviction. That's a belief. I didn't get elected. I didn't even finish the race. I stepped aside to allow our current Congresswoman, Claudia Tenney, to run and to eventually win. But I have a conviction for the beliefs to stand there and say, this is what I publicly said, and I believed it, and I still do. Nicholas Swan never raised to that level because he was waiting to see if he could get the money, and then he would run. And you know what? Any candidate who would stand up and say to the public, if I can get the money, then I'll stand for the issue, is the same person that if they ever get elected, I believe, is going to be the person that we're going to find out a couple of years down the road was also the one taking bribes. And we see that a lot in our politics, especially in New York State. We have how many assemblymen in the past month that have been arrested because of allegations of bribery and corruption? Our governor is under how many investigations for corruption? Sheldon Silver. How many people does it take in New York State to be on charges of corruption for us to understand that if they're worried about the money first and the people second, that's not a good candidate? And in the case of Nicholas Swan, what happened is that in December of 2017, very quietly, without much attention, Mr. Wan dropped out of the race. He stopped being a candidate or a potential candidate for the New York 22nd because he didn't hit his target, because he had no convictions. He had no beliefs that gave the people something to attach themselves to. And much like I had predicted in October, he went nowhere. He's a candidate, and he was never worthy of it. But I wanted to bring that up because I do follow everyone. And it's something that was on the back burner, and I should have mentioned it before today, but it really wasn't that important, other than it's important to know what we stand for. And I think that's relevant to what we're seeing today. What are we actually standing for? Are we standing for an ideal that we believe absolutely? Are we seeing our politicians stand for the people and what they were elected for? Or are we seeing politicians who are standing for money and they're standing for political gain at the expense of the constituents that elected them? Now, that's a really deep question. It's a serious question. It's a serious allegation. And I think that directly connects to the Dreamers and to DACA, and in particular to the vote that just happened, which was for the New York Dream Act. Something it's not the first time we've seen this. Democrats have tried to get that passed beyond the assembly in 2016 and 2017, and again now in 2018. And in 2018, the bill was under, bring that up for you folks, Bill A09605, if you were looking to see the vote count in the New York State Assembly. And that vote, which was supported by Anthony Brindisi and also Donald Lepardo, who are part of the New York 22nd District, and which is in Utica and Binghamton, respectively. the two biggest areas in the New York 22nd District, and many, many others. In fact, the vote was 89 for, 44 against. So it passed the New York State Assembly. And this bill, the New York DREAM Act, is to be able to give illegal aliens free college. That's troubling. That's troubling because I believe, and you may not, but I believe that the New York DREAM Act is politics first, the public second. This is political gain and political theater being placed above and beyond the citizens of New York. And that is, in my view, unacceptable. And we should call out these representatives for what they're doing, for how they are mistreating the very people who elected them to office, that they are standing up and representing in New York State 32,900 illegal aliens as opposed to taking care of the 19 million New York State residents. That's who they're supposed to represent. 19 million New York State residents and citizens as opposed to 32,900 illegal aliens. And I don't think that you could ever make that. There is nothing that compares to this. There's no allegory that's direct on this. It's a rarity we see in our American politics, where politicians throw the law and the people under a bus to get political gain. It's insulting. But I'm going to go into that a little bit more in the next segment. At the moment, we're going to take a quick break. I need a quick drink of water, and then we'll pick up and we'll talk a little bit more about this in this next segment. So I'll be right back. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me back here at No Soundbites Allowed. This is your host, Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I'm with you talking about the issues that are affecting us all. And in this episode, in the first segment, I was talking about the connection between Nicholas Wan, a proposed or potential candidate for the New York 22nd District, a Republican candidate, who based his candidacy on whether or not he could raise enough money to do this. And I have to say, money is not a factor. And I understand races, all elections cost money, and that's an important component. But the first thing should be your conviction. The second thing should be the money. Because we saw, as in 2016 alone, we saw that Kim Myers, the Democratic candidate, had gone out there and she spent upwards of, $7 million to run the race. There was $13 million spent between her and Martin Babinec to try and win the New York 22nd Congressional District race in 2016. And Claudia Tenney, by comparison, had about $300,000 that she spent, and she won. And I attribute that to the fact that to tell people the truth of your convictions and what you look to do, it costs 1/10 as much as someone who's only trying to have a political gain. So we saw Kim Myers, we saw Martin Babinec. They spent 10 times as much, if not well more. Some of them, it looks like 20 times in some cases, 20 times as much money to try and sell the public, because they were selling the public a political gain for them. It was their personal ambition that they were trying to sell to the public. And that's not what we elect officials for. It's not about your personal gain. It's not about your political objectives. It's about serving the public. And that doesn't cost a lot. And win or lose, that's why you get into an election. And that's why we should have elected officials, that because they actually stand up and stand for something beyond the gain of their party. And this is true of Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Conservatives. I don't care who you are, what party you may be with, independents. It doesn't matter. If you're standing up for values, then you're someone who deserves to be elected and should be respected for what you do. And you should remain in there. There are term limits, of course, but that's someone who we should stand behind, as opposed to those who are there either for the money or the fame or to just get political ambition and promote their party. Political zombies, in other words. Elected political zombies. I find those to be the worst. Now, I said that about Nicholas because of his desire for the money to be able to get the elected position. And in much the same way, we see that currently going on in New York State at many levels. And I'm not talking about the corruption in New York State, which is rampant and well documented. Whether you're talking about the Moreland Commission with Governor Cuomo, the Prococo trial that's ongoing right now, highlighting even more of the corruption, the Buffalo Billions, and how that's been a waste and just completely corrupt. No, I'm not talking about those things. I'm talking about the political ambition of the Democratic Party in New York State. In particular, let's be very specific, I'm talking about the New York Dream Act, which was just voted on. And this is not the first time. It's been voted on in 2016, in 2017, and now in 2018. It's been passed by the Assembly, and it doesn't help the people. Think about that. We're talking about a bill to provide a reward for illegal aliens, individuals who have committed a crime against the United States law and continue to perpetuate that crime without remorse, with a demand for a reward. Could you imagine that? Imagine a heroin dealer not only stepping up into the public eye and saying, you can't prosecute me for being a heroin dealer, but you should give me a reward for being a heroin dealer. Now, some would say, well, Mike, that's not the same thing. There's a different moral high ground here, and it's not the same. Well, yeah, it is. You broke a law that was put in place to protect citizens, to protect the public, because there's a negative consequence to breaking the law, whether it's moral or financial or physical, employment, it's all connected. So if you break a law knowingly and willingly, you should be accountable for that law that was broken. But we're not seeing that. Not in New York State. Not in many states. California is another one. But what we are seeing is that we're having individuals like Senator Schumer, who went so far as to shut down the government, costing over $1 billion per day, to shut down the government and inflict harm onto 327 million Americans because he wanted to stand up and represent 800,000 illegal aliens. And I would say, you know what? That isn't such a big deal if they had elected him. Except, again, these are illegal aliens. They can't vote. They have no rights because they're not American citizens. And they are active criminals. And just like anyone else who's committed a felony, they don't have a right to vote. Even more so. I mean, even if you want to say, well, they're in America, they've been in America. Well, they're active felons. Felons don't get to vote. It's another one of the consequences of breaking the law. It's a reason for you not to break the law. It's a consequence of that. So when I see that people are saying, trying to take the moral high ground, like Senator Schumer or Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who's constantly trying to say, and you see it in her Twitter feed all the time, we have a moral obligation to take care of the DACA individuals. No, we don't. No, we don't. There is nothing that morally obligates us to take care of someone who is morally violating the law. They are morally taking the low road. They broke the law, and they want a reward for having done so. There is no moral obligation for that. And let's go even further. There is no constitutional obligation there. There is nothing in the Constitution that says, if you break our laws, you get a reward. None. But they use this as a means to hide the issue, to confuse and conflate the facts. And I mean, it's really confused and conflated. Because in looking at this, in looking at documents from Newsday, from the LA Times, from factcheck.org, Daily Wire, I was researching this. How many of the DACA recipients are actually students? What's the average age of a DACA individual? How many of the DACA individuals work? What do they make? These are hard things to find out because depending on which year you pick, depending on what time in the year, depending on what's going on in the nation, the numbers about the DACA individuals change. From 2016 to 2018, you can find documents and articles from credible news sources that change the numbers every single time. And I mean, even within, say, the LA Times, they don't even follow their own sources. At one point, they're saying that the average age of a person who's a DACA recipient is about 20. Then they come out just a couple months later and say they're 24. We see items published in Newsweek and LA Times at roughly the same time period and just a month or so apart, and they have two entirely different numbers. The Newsweek is saying that 72% of all the individuals in DACA have jobs, whereas LA Times says that only 55% of them have jobs. Who knew? The LA Times is saying that the DACA recipients receive $15 an hour. The Newsweek is saying that they receive $17.46 an hour. Looking at Fact Check, you're seeing 2.1 million DACA individuals who fall under DACA. According to the LA Times, it's 1.1 million. I believe it was Newsweek that said there's 1.3 million. Who knows? These numbers change all the time. And that's all in reference to serving their political gain and to confuse the public. There is no one number. There is no one accepted answer. It's whatever serves the goal of getting their political gain and not serve the public. But what we can say is that roughly in New York State, under the New York DREAM Act as approved and passed by Assemblyman Anthony Brindisi, Assemblywoman Donna Lupardo, and 86 other assembly members, all Democrats, and opposed by Republican members of the assembly, we see that they're looking to give free college, higher education, to the illegal aliens. And you may say to yourself, well, if they're illegal aliens, how can they go to college? Believe it or not, 4,500 illegal aliens graduate from New York State high schools every year. 4,500. And of those, depending on the news source, somewhere around 10,000 of them go to college. Nationally, 10,000 go to college every year. So somewhere around 1 in 6 will go to college. How do they do that? I don't know. Considering they don't have a Social Security card, they don't have any proof that they belong in the nation, even though it's a crime to be in the nation without a green card, without any kind of documentation. But yet they do go to college somehow. And so the assembly is saying that we should spend $25 to $27 million to give them a free education as a reward for having broken our laws. That's a bit crazy. And what do we get because of this? Let's say they do go to college. And according to the various news sources, somewhere between a third to two-thirds, actually a third to three-quarters of the DACA recipients or eligible recipients, once they graduate college with a doctorate or better and they get into the workforce, which depending on the LA Times said 91% of them are working, and they make, I don't know, somewhere between 15, 17 or more dollars per hour, theoretically. And what does that actually mean, especially in New York State? Well, according to Senator Schumer, on January of 2018, according to his Twitter chart, he put out a chart on Twitter, New York State, there's 32,900 illegal aliens, DACA aliens, in New York State. And they generate $2.5 million for the GDP of New York. They're worth $2.5 million a year. Now, that sounds like big numbers. 32,900, might as well call it 33,000 people. They generate $2.5 million. Wow, that's a lot of money. No, it's not. It works out to $76 per person per year. $76 per person per year. You say, well, Mike, that's still kind of important, except let's think about it. New York State currently has over $350 million in a deficit, current. We have a total state deficit, net debt, of $4 billion. We're $4 billion in debt. 2.5 million is just about a statistical rounding error. It doesn't count. That $76 per person, honestly, is non-existent in the budget. But it's $25 million that could be going to citizens who are in need, whether it's because the veterans who need food, or whether it's children who need to eat, or people who are looking for shelter, like the homeless, or maybe it's because there's some students out there, lower income students, who need or would like to go to college and can't afford it. That same 4,500 people that they're looking to target could be 4,500 citizens, your kids, your brothers, your sisters, your cousins, your family members, that could be going to college for free, or perhaps receiving some other government aid. But the New York State Assembly believes that you are not morally equal to a criminal. That's what it breaks down to. That's what they're saying. Kirsten Gillibrand, we have a moral obligation to take care of DACA above and beyond citizens that elected her. That means you are morally not as important as a criminal. And to reward that criminal is morally superior and more important than to help you. Just because you're a citizen. You may be poor, you may have a need, but that illegal alien, that criminal who's still breaking the law, well, that person has a superior claim and they're more important than you are. That is what the Democrats are saying. Now I'm going to take a break. I want you to think about that for a second as the break goes through, and I'll come back and I'll really hammer this down on exactly how the Democrats are looking at citizens versus the illegal aliens. But we'll be back in just a moment. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me at No Soundbites Allowed. This is your host, Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I am happy to be here with you because you are some of the best audiences ever. Now, I want to go back and recap what we've been talking about so far. And so far, in the first segment, we're talking about the correlation of how Nicholas Swan, very much like the Democrats, in the Assembly and in New York State, the leadership of the state, where we see individuals who are predicating their election, their service, based on their need, about what they can get out of it. In the case of Nicholas Swan, he needed to receive $25,000 before he would be willing to run for Congress. And that obviously didn't work for him, and it shouldn't. But there are many people who have already been elected, and they are predicating their service based on their political gain. And I want to say this. We're looking at it with Governor Cuomo. We're talking about Senator Chuck Schumer. We're talking about Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Assemblywoman Donna Lupardo. We're talking about Assemblyman Anthony Brindisi, and many, many others, who are putting a political gain, their party, the Democratic Party, Citizen Action, the far left, they're putting them and illegal aliens, criminals under the law, ahead of the public. And that's, really upsetting. It's terrifying, actually. And I say this only because this is what they have said to us. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand has, I don't know how many tweets where she constantly says there is a moral obligation for Americans to take care of the DACA recipients. Morally obligated. And let's put this into the real world terms. She says that we have a moral obligation to take care of remorseless criminals who are asking for a reward from the American people. And under Chuck Schumer, we know that he has stated and took the position that 800,000 remorseless criminals are more important than 327 million Americans, and he is willing to punish the entire nation by shutting down the government to be able to serve those 800,000 people who couldn't even vote for him. That's pretty insane. That's pretty insane. And on the state level, bring it down. You know, we're seeing Assemblywoman Donna Lopardo and Assemblyman Anthony Brindisi, who hopes to be he's running in the New York 22nd election on the Democratic side, who have stated that less than 32,900 DACA recipients, or roughly, based on the research, 4,500 DACA students, actually people who are under the age of 18, that 4,500 of them are morally superior and more important than 19 million New York State residents and citizens. Wow. That's something. That they want to give $25 million of taxpayer dollars to 4,500 criminals who are without remorse and are demanding, or in some cases demanding, some cases requesting a reward. And that is the morally, and according to the Democratic Party, you know, Governor Cuomo, this is a moral necessity and a superior position than the citizens. They are more important than the homeless. They are more important than the poor. They are more important than veterans. They are more important than the elderly. All places that they could take that $25 million and spend it on. All places of need. All individuals that could be helped out. They're not as important as illegal aliens who have committed a crime and continue to commit that crime. Now, I want to address something that I know I hear a lot about. And by the way, I'll have sources for all of this in the description in the podcast. But I hear sometimes people say, but there's nothing that they could have done. The DACA individuals, they have no choice. They can't become citizens. They have no way in the process to do this. And, you know, so they're stuck. And so we are morally obligated because they don't have a choice. And yet, according to factcheck.org, and I believe it was Newsweek as well, 40,000 of the DACA recipients across the nation, out of 800,000, 40,000 of them got green cards. Let that sink in for a second. For the argument is, from Democrats and liberals, they can't do anything. They're stuck in this gray area where nothing can happen. They can't become a citizen even if they wanted to, which they should. But even if they wanted to, they couldn't. Because there's this moral gray area, legal gray area that they can't get out of. And yet, what is not reported is that 40,000 of them actually did get green cards. 40,000 of them are on the process to becoming American citizens. So where's this argument that they couldn't do it? How can you say none of them can do it? That they're all in this gray area that prevents them from becoming American citizens, and yet 40,000 of them, roughly 5%, are in the process, that they actually did it. So, again, we're not being told the truth. Again, we're having politics trump the people. That's serving the public, as is sworn by their oath, and why they were elected, is not their purpose. Their purpose is a political gain. Because the far left loves this. Socialists love this. That's the only thing I can think of. They think that American people are swayed And they're counting on the fact that the American people will be swayed by compassion and stop thinking. This is all reliant and counts. It's key to making sure that you don't think about this at all. I know there's a lot of numbers that I went through in the last segment, but they're counting on the fact that you're never going to look at those numbers. That the moment you see the numbers and it says you should probably do the math, you're going to say, nope, I'm not going to do the math. I'll just go with the headline. That they're going to count that you're not going to read through the bill or read through the details to figure out, wait a minute, what are you actually talking about? That you're going to see in that tweet that it says from Senator Kirsten Gillibrand that there's a moral obligation. And because she's elected, you're going to say, there must be a moral obligation. We must do this then. Because, she's elected, so she knows better. And I have to tell you, I've yet to see an election where the person who got elected had their IQ increase because of that. They're the same person with just as much intelligence before they got elected as after. They're morally the same person before and after. No elected official is morally superior to anyone because they got elected. That's not what an election does. But that's the impression of an election. It's the impression that someone must be pretty smart if they got elected, which isn't the case. Someone must be morally superior if they got elected. That's not the case. We see too many. How many corruption trials has Governor Cuomo gone through? He's elected. Investigations, I should say. He's been investigated how many times? How many people surrounding him have been convicted or under investigation for corruption? I will say that he probably is smarter than the average person because he himself somehow seems to always avoid being implicit or complicit in these corruption trials. But that has nothing to do with the fact that he got elected. It just means he's smart about how he does what he does. Or doesn't do, however the case may be. But I have to say, it's truly troubling to me. Truly, truly, deeply troubling to me that we're listening to these politicians say that the average American citizen is not as worthy as a criminal who is actively breaking the law. Because that is what they are saying. When they say to you that 4,500 criminals deserve free stuff, it's not free. It's coming out of your pocket. It's your taxes that are paying for it. That's $25 million of taxpayer money. That's your money coming out of your pocket. And that is money that they have chosen, the leadership of New York, to put to their pet project. Because they want to. Not because the public. I tell you, if 19 million New York residents all got together and said, we're going to give this money to illegal aliens, I'm all with it. If half, 51%, said, we're going to give this money to illegal aliens, if 51% of the people of New York State said that we want to be a sanctuary state, I'd go with it. Not because I believe that's the best thing, but because we're a democracy. And if the people are voting for that, and if the people are asking for that, then that's what we should do. But that isn't what we're being given. That isn't the choice we were given to make. There has never been an election that says, or a vote or proposition during an election that says, do you want to give money for free to illegal aliens? They'll never put that on a proposition. There's never been a proposition that says, do you want to be complicit in breaking the law and provide a criminal with a reward? Because that's what that's what it would say. If you had to vote on it, that's what it would have to say. To be legal and to be binding, they would have to say, do you vote yes or no to give a criminal, an active criminal, evading prosecution from the law, a reward for breaking the law. Vote yes or no. I don't think people would ever vote for that if you were to word it like that, which is legally and correctly what it is. Instead, they go on TV or on Twitter or on Facebook and say you have a moral obligation to do this. You have to do it. You're obligated. No, you're not. No, we are not. We're United States citizens. We're not obligated to do anything other than the laws that we have duly voted for or have representatives who are representing us and actually putting in place. We all agree that if there is a stop sign, we should stop. That is a law. That is something that we put together through the public and our representatives, and we created driving regulations and laws. We never had that choice with illegal aliens. We're being told what to do. Governor Cuomo, Senator Schumer, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Anthony Brindisi are telling us what to do. And telling us that the reason we have to do it is because they said so. Because they like it. That has nothing to do with that. If there were 800,000 DACA recipients who voted and said, hey, I want you to go out into Congress and get this passed, or to get into the assembly and pass this law. You know, that's one thing. They can't vote. They're not citizens. They don't have rights. That's a fact. It's not moral, or there's no question about this. It's not a gray area. They don't have rights. They're not American citizens. They're not. But we have elected officials acting like they are not just American citizens, but they are better. They're the very pinnacle of American citizens, and everyone else is second class compared to them. I mean, how else would you justify shutting down a nation for illegal criminals? If they are not superior, how could you possibly justify it? How can you justify giving $25 million to 4,500 illegal aliens while there are people who are homeless, veterans who have need of medical aid, mental health care? There are kids who are starving. I mean, that's the choice they are asking us to make with our money. Actually, it's not even the choice. It's not a choice. They're telling us that's how they're going to spend our money. Money that they already spent decades ago. We're $4 billion in debt. We already spent this money. This is money our great-grandkids are going to have to pay back. And they're telling us we have to do it their way because they say so. I mean, how can you not be upset by this? This is insulting. It's insulting. It's just that they have very good press people who write really good speeches. And they have really good advertisers who put out nice little memes on Facebook. And they expect you to be stupid and not to think about it and not to look at it and not to read the details and not to pay attention because, you know, they're elected, so they're superior. And they get to tell you how things are going to be because, you know, this is America. And politicians get to tell the public what to do, which isn't a democratic system, as I recall in my history classes, oh so many years and decades ago. That was more like a serfdom, with nobles telling the serfs what to do. We've regressed. We need to stop that. But I want you to think about it. Please let me know what you think. Tell me if you think I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell me your opinions and thoughts. This is Michael Voss at No Soundbites Allowed. I'm looking forward to hearing from you again very soon, and we'll be back soon with another episode. But until then, please be well, and I'll talk to you soon.